Oh god. Okay. Should I be awake right now? No. It's 12:43 a.m. I should, by no means. Oh god. Okay. Well, I'm sure if you've ever listened to me talk about anything, you know that I adore philosophy. I love thinking about things. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I'm a genius or anything. I'm a person just like any other. And, I don't know the answers, but I love seeing people think, because I get to find out what other perspectives are on this world, and sometimes I need that. Sometimes I need to see what these guys over here are living for, what makes them want to live, what makes them think life is all about. So, I doubt anyone is going to particularly pop in tonight, seeing as it's rather late, and, it's a Tuesday night. And in retrospect, I don't know why I'm even doing this, but I just felt like I needed to. So here we are, and let's begin the commentary.
Right,
I hope you guys can hear it fine.
Nice to see you again. Hello.
Let me just test this out. Well, you'll hear some echo for a second.
Hello, Oliver.
I might talk to you about Hampstead Heath sometime.
Nice to see you
I
again.
understand our nan is supposed to
Test this
take
out.
walks.
Well, you'll hear some echo for a second.
Go back.
Something about class background?
Hampstead Heath sometime.
Okay, so it seems like it's fairly equal.
Yes, you were raised there?
I played on Queens Boulevard.
That's what's there.
The three of you are connected to Hampstead Heath.
Terrible,
Robert Shelder is living there at the moment.
I lived there.
And Oliver Sacks and Steve Toulmin were raised there.
Yes.
What kind of memories do you share? The same?
Well, we'll find out.
Well, it was the landscape of your dreams. As a child, you went to Julian Huxley to ask about evolution.
Yeah, they looked at splendor in the grass and glory in the flower, right?
I
not
remember
wrong, I believe that a couple of
tobogganing
these
down
guys are
Parliament Hill
scientists.
Fields. I mean, I
But
think the
they're
things one
philosophers.
remembers about childhood are very often the things that almost never happened. And my two most intense memories are memories of winter, which is really quite rare in England. I remember going skating on the Bedford level when I think it must have been 36, when it was just like Holland. You had a stretch of 30 or 40 kilometers, which was solidly frozen flood water between the dikes, and you could just start skating and and put your foot over barbed wire fences from time to time, and then go on for another mile and so on. And there were people with braziers roasting chestnuts on the side of the thing, straight out of a broicle table, you know.
This is Christmas,
But I'm
man.
sure the reason I remember it is just because it only happened once.
As you say, it's things which happen only once that you remember. There was an eclipse of the sun in 1927, which was visible in England, and that I remember vividly. It was...
You were within the range of totality, were you?
No. No, it was total in Yorkshire, and
No, my parents went up to Yorkshire to see it. I stayed at home.
you missed it too. Well, anyway, but I saw it three quarters total, and I was 3 at the time. I suppose it may have had something to do with my being a scientist.
That is one thing that I notice a lot in people. It's when you talk to people, they won't remember the same things that their parents remember. As a parent, you remember like the things that are really what you would think is important for a child. So you'll remember like graduation ceremony, maybe a birthday party, maybe a award they got. Um, Meanwhile, if you ask like a 3-year-old, 15 years later, they might not remember those things, or they probably won't remember those things. Usually, in my experience, when I've been talking to people, it's weird things. It's weird little things. It's just people learning small things about the world. Um, remember one of mine was when I was in school and I was talking to kids, and I came across the idea of plasma. And at this point, I was already like in second, third grade. I at this point it was locked in my head that there were only 3 forms of matter, right? And then I hear about plasma. I'm just like, that is insane. There's there's no way that there's something even more than gas, because I was pretty good at, like, visualizing things. So I imagined this like solid, a solid, it's everything's fairly slow moving. The motor's not really vibrating a lot. And liquid, it's a little more flowing, in my head, than gas just shaking around everywhere. And so for gas being crazy, that was already enough. Like in my little tyke mind, my brain was always like, gas is like the shakiest anything can get. There's no way. And then plasma comes around. I'm like, how can anything get more shaky than grass? I think grass and gas, and it just blew my mind. It's absolutely insane to me that anything could be like that, and that not only was it that, but that it was like the sun. That the sun wasn't really a hot ball of gas. It was a hot condensed ball of gas that became plasma, and that was crazy to me. That such a form of matter that I didn't even know existed has been staring at me all these years, just giving light to the world. And these are all things that happened in my head. If you were to ask my parents, they wouldn't even know this happened to me. They would have no idea. Because it's not what someone thinks is going to be their most important moment. It's just what happens. Humans are weird. Anyway.
I had an experience a couple of years ago which led me to write an essay about it, which gave me some insight. And just a funny little incident I remembered and had remembered all my life, something I used to do with my grandfather weekly in Queens, where I grew up. We would buy the New York Times, and then we'd go. He was a very nattily dressed and formal man. We'd go to some steps, and he'd lay out the newspaper, and we'd sit on the steps and have these wonderful conversations. Now, the main building in that area was the Farcels Tennis Stadium, and so I pictured, and I was sure that's where it was, that these steps were the back steps of the tennis stadium. And all my life I've told that story. Clearly I knew it to be so. I was in my old neighborhood for the first time in 30 years, a couple of years ago, and I walked down Queens Boulevard, and I suddenly realized it couldn't have been the tennis stadium, because that was a mile away, and we didn't walk that far. And then I saw this old, dilapidated, 6-story warehouse building, and there were the steps. I had transmogrified the memory onto the more heroic building in that neighborhood, and yet the memory was so clear. Now, if I had been right, it just would have been an object. It still would have been part of me, but it's so much more a part of me that I had made this mixture.
That's another thing. Is that sometimes you can't trust your memory. Sometimes it's that you misremember things, for better or for worse. For example, an embarrassing memory, you might like intensify everyone's reaction to your odd activity, right? You might imagine that everyone else is awkward, like even more awkward than you after you say something, right? Or in his example, you like make it a tall tale, and sometimes you lie to yourself to the point where you think it's real. And this happens all the time to people, where I don't know, it especially happens in like 8th graders, right? It's the 8th grader syndrome, that's a famous thing. And I think it's mainly Japanese, but it's kind of gone international now, so the term. But 8th grader syndrome, in that kids in 8th grade, they want to be special, right? They want to be special, and so they have these grandiose kind of things going on, right? In their heads that make them better. It's like, I'm more popular than you, I'm smarter than you, or maybe they tell themselves that they have more superpowers, or in more like unstable cases, they will like try to be more pitiable than you. I've had a worse life than you. I've been through more troubles. And that therefore makes me better than you. Or especially nowadays, it's like a fucking contest of depression. But so yeah, it's so kids will like lie to themselves, right? And like, or they'll tell lies to other people, right? And from there, they keep saying those words and those thoughts until the point where it becomes part of their memory. And I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know that I've done something like that, in which I lie to people until it becomes a truth to me. And the fact that I can't immediately think of it shows just how much it cemented itself in part of my head. I can't think of it. I know there was something, but I can't remember what it was. Another thing you remember a lot as a kid is your mistakes, because, and you know that, and you could say that's like an evolutionary thing, is that it's more important that you remember your mistakes than anything else, because that's how you get better. That's how you prevent any more mistakes. I remember as a kid, I went to this little private Catholic school in Puerto Rico, right? And I had this nice little white polo with the Virgin Mary on the corner, and come on. There's my face. With the Virgin Mary on the corner, right? And I was a little fucking bastard, right? So I was sitting there in class, I grabbed my pencil, and I poked through the little holes in my polo, okay? So I slid my pencil, my sharp pencil, through the little stitches in the polo, to poke little holes in it. And I just kind of did this because I was bored. And so I walk out of school with like a fucking million little black dots on my polo, my beautiful white polo. Right? And I walk out and I get in the car with my dad. He's like, "Oh, Edo, what happened? Huh? Fuck, what? What happened?" And I just turned to him and I made up this beautiful story of two troublemakers in class throwing pencils at each other across the room, and we had a warfare, and we all hung from the ceiling. We were hanging from the ceiling, and I was holding on for my dear life, and they kept throwing pencils across the room, and those pencils, they landed right in my shirt. But don't worry, father, I was a brave soldier, and I survived. They merely punctured my polo, and they did not get me. So do not worry, father. You are a lucky one, father, that I was not harmed, and instead it was only my polo that I fucking shoved. When in reality I shoved my pencil through it a ton of times. And he of course knew. He was like, "Oh, that's nice." He didn't even try to call my bluff. He was just like, "Uh-huh, cool." It's like, okay, well, just be more careful next time, you might. Those things are expensive. And so it's those things that you remember, those little fucking things. Why is my head moving out so much? Okay. Anyway,
Oliver, who once wrote, "In science and in the scientific life, there can be some regaining of an imaged, idyllic sort of purity and transparency of childhood."
I did.
Yes. It's a nice idea.
I think for myself, and perhaps this is so for all of us, I think the roots of scientific wonder go back to childhood wonder. To some
Absolutely.
extent, it's a preservation of childhood wonder, where we're all a bit childish through this preservation of a sort of wonder and playfulness, and we don't have it all fixed, perhaps I had something in mind like that.
Well, I think that there's a special selection here. Nobody here hides his philosophical ambitions, and in a way, I think philosophers are. These are arrested development children. In a certain way, children are philosophers, and we just never lose that completely childish ambition that we're actually going to understand something very, very deep. We're not just going to put that aside and be grown-ups. We're going to continue to think about those things that fascinated us when we were children.
Oliver, you said in New York, when I'm at a conference, I would like to know the form of passion in my fellows at the conference. I know what the passion is in Stephen Jay Gould. It is love for all the forms of life. And I wonder what the passion is with the philosophers.
Well, passion means suffering. I can't forget the original.
It's a romantic question, I'm sorry, but nevertheless.
That's important.
The passion of
because
Christ. Yes.
You don't
The
really
etymology
get
for
at
passion
things
comes
unless you
from, like,
invest
pain.
that kind of devotion. That kind of devotion does entail a great deal of.
I know this is the worst time to make the JoJo reference, but that's one kind of thing where Passione kind of has like that Christian kind of symbolism, and of course JoJo does not shy away from its Christian symbolism, but in that you need to deal with the pain to reach your salvation, and Jodno is kind of going with that. He starts off as a man, and he becomes holier and holier as time goes on until he's like the fucking god. And I don't think Passione was chosen by mere a good sounding word. I think it was done on purpose. It's a kind of illusion.
Suffering if only because you have to cast off other things that you'd very much like to do. If I'd had a better voice, I'd probably be singing Wotan today. If I had better bodily skills, I would have played professional baseball. Fortunately, I had skills in one of the areas that excited my interests, the other two being baseball and opera, where I didn't have skills, and that was paleontology. Ever since I saw a skeleton of Tyrannosaurus when I was 5,
Is it paleontology?
found it so thrilling in that ultimate childlike sense of being absolutely overwhelmed. I once asked a psychologist friend of mine why dinosaurs are fascinating to kids. His answer was a little flip, but not inaccurate. He said, big, fierce, and extinct.
You can't be
Nothing
scared
rare about being a childhood dinosaur.
That is funny. I do like that. It's the kids like to when they see something powerful, they like to put themselves onto it, and so they're just like when they see a big, powerful dinosaur, they're like, wow. And it can't hurt me either. So it becomes more like a pet than anything. The second you see a powerful thing and it can't hurt you, it becomes more like a pet. It becomes something that's interesting and cool rather than something that's scary. That's why kids love the megalodon, but they're freaked out by the great white shark. It's cool. And then that childhood wonder thing is so crazy. That's exactly how it is. Is that the reason why anyone becomes a scientist, why anyone pursues sciences, is out of wonder. You want to learn more. It's fun to learn. I should probably go to bed now. It's like 1:02. I'm just waiting to like the 20-minute mark, but I think I'll listen to this more on another date, or maybe even tomorrow. I just think it's these guys. So it seems like they all come from different backgrounds, right? All are scientists, and I guess they do philosophy on the side, which that's fun. Wow, wow, what's that? it's inherently childish, isn't it? To be a philosopher, to be a scientist. You know, you could very much be an adult and just kind of go on with being a farmer or whatever, trying to feed your family or whatever will keep any of you alive. But no, you decide to study things that might help humanity and will help them right now, such as like health sciences, engineering. But when you study them, not when you put them into action, when you're studying them and testing things, I feel like more than helping people, it's a selfish endeavor in that you want to learn, you want to understand things, and I can really relate to that. I love learning. I want to know more, as many things as I can. I wish I could just fucking like shoot knowledge into my brain, hot steamy knowledge right into my fucking pituitary gland. Pituitary gland. Yeah, of course I can speak so well today. I don't know. I think I'm gonna finish up now, but that was a good intro. I'm excited to learn more about this stuff tomorrow. Um, Arrivederci.